Hello, a couple of days ago I started building this Halloween arch. To create the base of my Halloween arch, I scavenged 2 photography stands from my collection. Typically, these are used with a bar across the top to hold backdrops. I used pavers to level them out and sandbags to steady them, and then I attached wire to certain points of the house and entryway to ensure the structure wouldn't fall. I then used a heat gun to heat the ends of my PVC pipe and allow it to slip over the tops of the stands and create a rounded archway, and attached more wire to steady the top of the arch by attaching it to the entryway beams with screws. Then it was time to start decorating. I started with some branches from my yard that I had spray painted black, and I began wiring these onto the stands. And then chronic pain hit and I could not do any more. But today, the weather's good, the pain is gone, I am back, and it's time to finish this arch. I needed to finish filling in the arch with more branches that I'd spray painted black, so I started off by doing that, and then adding a little bit more creepy cloth. When I was done with that, I realized it needed something more on the base, so I grabbed this 300-gram packet of raffia that I got from the local craft store, and I just started splitting it up and tying small thin bundles to each branch to add a little bit of dimension to the backdrop. I really liked the look that this gave it. It looked very like fall and harvesty, even though I am in Australia and it is spring. I feel like I should add a few flowers to this arch. And you can ignore my hillbilly porch in the background. I've got issues with it. I don't know how to fix it. I bought the $25 posable skeleton from Kmart. It's about 165 centimeters tall, so roughly the same height as me. And I wanted to suspend this from one side of the arch because I was going for kind of like vintage whimsical arch, not like a strict pumpkin arch. I affixed him to the photography stands with a little bit of wire, and I also made sure to reinforce the wire that was securing the arch originally to the house. I got this $8 pumpkin from Kmart. It's super light. I have a few more. I'm going to be drilling holes into the back of the pumpkin to wire him onto the arch. Same with this. I also made this cute little vintage style jack-o'-lantern a couple of years ago with plaster and styrofoam pumpkins. So I'm going to do the same thing to him. Need to take this barcode off. I got it off. So here I have the cauldron, some lights, some wax paper, and some expanding foam, but I have lost the expanding foam trigger things. I'm gonna lean this guy.
We interrupt this program for a special event. Smeagol finds textures.
You love textures so much, Smeagol.
I wanted this cauldron to light up and look like it was leaking a fun little potion, so I drilled holes into the back and I cut a slot for the solar pack of a strand of purple fairy lights to slide through. The solar pack needed sun exposure to recharge and let the cauldron light up by itself each night. I then hot glued the lights inside the cauldron in a few key spots to create a glowing effect. And then I organized them to look a little bit like they were spilling out so that I could spray expanding foam over them. Oh god. Then my expanding foam adventures took a turn and I had to grab it with my hands and I was not wearing gloves. Note to self, use gloves.
8 hours later.
To create a cute bubble effect with the potion, I also added in some ping pong balls. When the expanding foam was dry, I mixed up a few different shades of purple with acrylic paint.
Hello. The last time you guys saw me, I had expanding foam covering all of my hands. I did manage to get the expanding foam off, but it took a little bit of my skin with it. Today is finally the day that we're going to finish the arch and the pumpkin topiaries that I plan to use to cover the base, so let's get crafting. I'm covered in paint. The clean hands never last.
I had decided that fake spiderwebs would add even more dimension and spookiness to cover the base of my Halloween arch, so I stretched these around the bases of the stands, the skeleton, the pots, the pavers, basically everything that was the bottom, the sandbags, and then even over the pumpkins. I actually used a $2 store plastic tablecloth folded up underneath my doormat to give it a layered effect. And then I added a couple of jack-o'-lanterns I had purchased from Big W, a lantern, and some flower pots with little tombstones staked into them.
Hello, we're almost ready for the reveal, but before we do that, I'm going to be really annoying and ask you guys to subscribe if you are enjoying this kind of content, and if you would like to see more holiday crafting and decorating videos. I do them a lot on this channel, and throughout the year I do a lot of home renovations. Also, if you want to leave a like or a comment to help me out on the YouTube algorithm, that would be awesome. But anyway, I think this pumpkin arch needs something more, and I think it's going to be pumpkin luminaries.
This year, when it came to Halloween, Kmart really came through with the cheap and easy decorations. I found these little hollow paper mache pumpkins on their website and I ordered 3 of them. I used layers of orange, green, yellow and brown acrylic paint to get them to look a little bit more like real pumpkins, and I found that sponging the colour with a dry sponge worked brilliantly for this. Once they were dry, I marked out some cute little jack-o'-lantern faces and I cut them out with a crafting knife. I found these brilliant LEDs on AliExpress. It's a single warm white LED powered by 3 tiny coin batteries. But the best part is the switch base. It's exactly what you need when trying to create small light up figures without having cords coming out of the base. I traced around the light and I cut out a hole to hot glue it into. It looks super cute, but then I saw someone on TikTok make something similar but put parchment paper behind the cutouts, so I added in some printer paper and also tried out red cellophane. To fix these little guys into place, I staked a small dowel into some florist foam hidden behind my big pumpkins, and I tied each of these little guys on with a pipe cleaner. The other week I showed you how I made this Frankenstein-inspired tombstone, and how I sculpted the face out of polymer clay and attached it. If you haven't seen that video, go watch it next. It's very Halloweeny and spooky time.
So a couple of years ago I started to make this tombstone until one day I decided that I absolutely hated it, and I hid it in my partner's office until he finally encouraged me to start working on it again.
I used a totally different method to create the face here. I actually did not have enough confidence in my artistic skills at this point in time to think that I could make a relatively passable looking face. So I used a styrofoam head as a guide. I then built her face out to look a little more unique and interesting using monster clay. Monster clay is often used by special effects makeup artists when sculpting prosthetics for a face. They'll take a cast of someone's face and then they will add monster clay to it. Then they'll take a new mold of the face with the new additions and they'll use that to create prosthetics that perfectly fit the person wearing them. So I mixed up some dental alginate over the new face and brushed it on to make sure I got into all the crevices. Then I used plaster bandages to stiffen this and to make sure it could hold the plaster of Paris I would be pouring into the mold. And here you can see Smeagol and Earl sniffing a suspicious looking substance.
Hang on, I am really starting to wonder if this is where Smeagol's addiction to trying to eat everything he's not supposed to started.
Because if you look at the evidence...
Honey, those are carrots.
I'm starving, mother.
I've been reduced to eating a carrot.
Hello, eater of building materials.
Styrofoam. You can stain a little bit, but you can't have the plastic.
Are you in the Christmas tree? Sir? Flowers, not yours. His brother ate half a Hawaiian skirt the other day and threw up violently, so I would like these guys to not.
I mixed up a batch of plaster of Paris and let it dry for 12 hours. Then I gently separated my cast from the mold, taking care to separate all the alginate. I used a scrap of thermoplastic and my heat gun to create what was basically a plastic mask to attach to the front of the tombstone. Thermoplastic gets very hot, so I used a damp paper cloth and sculpting tools as often as I could to get the details to come through. And I also carved out some eye hollows with a Dremel tool. Unfortunately, I have zero video evidence of how the face went on the tombstone or even how the tombstone came to be, but it was paper mache. It just all happened so long ago and I forgot to film it because I hated this project. I then attempted to paint out an RIP etching that would look a little bit 3D, but it was difficult given the roughness of the surface, so I just kept going over it with black paint and attempted to blend everything in. I sponged white acrylic paint over the grey with a dry sponge, painted watered down black paint into all of the crevices and shadows, taking care to really outline things like the ghostly maiden's dress creases and her hair, which was made, I remember, by paper macheing over twists of alfoil. And her fingers, also a product of foil sculpting.
You guys know that if your spiderwebs get wet, they will melt into your concrete.